From the kitchen of the cabin, a look at the games that made us who we are in Ben and Steve's Advent Calendar. So, here we are. This is December the 7th, isn't it, Steve? I'm just looking at the calendar on my...
We really should have put the dates in our document.
What do you mean dates in our document? We're doing this live. This is a live broadcast. It's December the 7th.
What's the punchline in the joke of your tear-off calendar for today? Just the punchline, not the setup.
Oh, it just says, "You're ugly and you'll never be loved."
Classic.
Anyway, so, yeah, today is a very exciting one because I think this might be, now I'm looking at our list of games, I think this might be the first uncontroversial classic that we've chosen. And it is the first entry from the sort of archetypal board game designer. And I think he will crop up a few more times over this Christmas period. But now, this is a game I only played once with, and don't get offended by this, Steve. Don't get offended by this. I only played this once at BerlinCon with your absolutely awful explanation. I didn't know what the fuck I was doing. But people are convinced that this is an absolute classic. And I'm sure it is, and I need to play it at some point. So, Steve, tell the people what they've got.
Tigris and Euphrates, Ben. Tigris and Euphrates. And not only is this an undeniable classic, I was there, Ben. I was there 20-odd years ago when it came out. I went into the store and I bought... This is the first game I bought, like you might say, sight unseen. It just looked cool. It was Mayfair Games. It was called Tigris and Euphrates. I'd never heard of Rainer Knizia. I don't think Rainer Knizia was that big a deal back then, at least not in America. Maybe he was in Germany. But I looked at the box. It seemed like something that I would enjoy. I bought it. And I played this game with a bunch of Princeton University students back when I lived in Princeton. And I beat them. And they were very cocky, and they won most of the games. But I would go to the Princeton Board Game Club and I showed up with this game and I destroyed them. So obviously I have fond memories of it for that reason. But also this game is just brilliant. I mean, I was mentioning the chess-like aspects of Condottiere the other day. This game has that in spades, and it also has that what I would later learn is a classic Rainer Knizia way of scoring, where you have to score in multiple categories, but your final score is determined by the category in which you have the fewest points. I'd never seen that before. The way that interaction works in this game, the way you build the temples and accrue points and attack and sort of manipulate the state of the board. I don't know what I could say about this game that would be, I don't know, that would be enough. That would be up to the standard of review that is required to really capture its essence and to persuade you, Ben, to give it another go. I mean, we should play this 2-player when I get back, because
I don't need any persuading.
Fan, this is a game that you need. I would say that if you didn't like it, even if you don't like it on a second play, you need to play it until you do like it. Just like some forms of music and other kinds of art, you have to develop a taste and appreciation for them. I think Tigris and Euphrates is a game that is worth trying to develop that taste and appreciation.
Yeah, I mean, I don't need persuading to play it. I will definitely play it again. But so
Ben,
I remember
I don't know why you persist in this unnecessary intransigence. Don't be stubborn.
I think you're over egging my lack of desire to play Tigris and Euphrates. I just bloody have never got the option. But
okay, I'll bring drinks. Okay.
I'll play anything. I'll play bloody Gugong if you got booze. So, what I want to know, Steve, I think we should take 5 minutes here, and you should give us a little chat about Rainer Knizia. Why? Why do you think Rainer Knizia looms so largely over this hobby, over a 30-year span?
5 minutes? Oh my God. I suppose I could talk about Rainer Knizia for a lot longer than 5 minutes. I mean, you're probably the person who has enabled my appreciation of Rainer Knizia more than anybody else, because I didn't come into games really caring about the designers, but you see the same name over and over again, and there are certain names, right? Rainer Knizia, Uwe Rosenberg, Vladimir Sushi, and you're almost never disappointed. Now, I wouldn't say every single one of Rainer Knizia's games is like a runaway success. I've certainly played
a lot of them are shit, right? Because he's designed so many, but there are so many also that are just perfect.
When he's good, he's transcendent. Like he reaches heights of design that put him in a league of his own, right? Like you couldn't call them Euro games, you couldn't call them, Ameritrash, or I don't know what you would call some of his games. I mean, Tigris and Euphrates, it somehow stands apart. Like many of his games, where you're sort of they have this kind of combination of abstraction and whimsy and tightness. Like I want to say mathematical tightness, but just like mechanistic simplicity combined with rich experience. He is just the master of cutting away all that is unnecessary. Let's say he's the Mike. I'm really overdoing it, aren't I? The Michelangelo of board games. He sees the essence of the game that he's trying to create in the block of marble, and he just removes everything that is unnecessary. Unlike so many Euro games today, what you like to call Silver Age Euro games, that seem to do the opposite. They want to add, they want more, they want to make it more complicated to the point where I think it becomes barely a game and just kind of this experience of mechanisms. But Rainer Knizia, he designs proper games. I mean, games that can stand the test of time as games, if you know what I mean.
So the thing I think about Knizia is one thing that Knizia does, and I've asked him this, and he kind of denied it, but it's nevertheless true. And I assume it must just be some instinctual ability he has. But he understands how to leverage human desire. There is something about his games that he reaches into your brain and presses this button. So many of his games do this. And what's so wonderful about Knizia, and why I think Knizia is a genius, and sure, he pumps out game after game after game, and a lot of them aren't great, but when he's good, is because, as you say, he has this aspiration for the game to be as simple as possible. None of his games feel overblown to me. None of his games feel like he's demonstrating his skill through mechanical deployment. His games feel like to me that he plays them and he hones them and he hones them and he hones them until they're just exactly right. And they're so simple, his games, and yet they provide so much depth, so much interaction. Rainer Knizia wants people to get around a table and shout at each other, I think.
I mean, he definitely put in his 10,000 hours as a game designer. I mean, the number of iterations he's gone through, like in general, across all of the games he's designed, I wouldn't be surprised if they come out of his mind like fully formed, like while he's sitting on the toilet, for all I know. There's a game. He's got it.
Rainer Knizia does not shit. How dare you?
So I have a question for you, because you are more, I would say you're more of a Rainer Knizia fanboy than I am. And yet, when I had met you, you never had played, I don't think I'm using the past perfect tense correctly. This is too much exposure to German. When I met you, you had never played Tigris and Euphrates. You'd heard about it. You haven't played it, and you're still not a fan of it, having only played it once. Why? How did that happen?
Well, I mean, the time we played it, I just didn't know what I was doing, so that's the thing.
But why was that the first time? I mean, for such a fan of Rainer Knizia, how is it that you hadn't gotten to this board game up until that point?
Well, I think it's interesting, isn't it? Because I think Tigris and Euphrates. So I know about Tigris and Euphrates by listening to gamers that have been into gaming longer than I have, and that it was such a big deal when it came out. But it's not a game you see on tables much. You see modern art a lot. You see high society a lot. You don't see Tigris and Euphrates. And I guess I just have never got round to it. It's one of his classics, but it's one that is not being played by people to this day, right?
I guess. I mean, they did reprint it, but yeah, to a certain extent, maybe it's just not a game for our time. I think People are far more attracted to these, what you call Skinner box type games, which I was saying before aren't really games. They're just like mechanism experiences where you sit around and churn out points and so forth. I'm being very cynical. It's just that's what these games feel like when compared to some of these classic Knizia designs where like you actually can learn the game. You can remember the rules from session to session. You can even become good at them. You even might want to become good at them. If I were interested in tournament play, which I'm not really, this would be a game I could imagine playing in a tournament, because not only does it have these aspects of like chess, right, where you can sort of learn it and explore it and become better at it, but it's fun. It's still so much fun. Even like the barely pasted on theme, like I kind of enjoy.
Yeah, I think so. People talk about theme a lot, and there are some games that are very thematic, I think. I was playing a Tiwa the other day, and there are aspects to a Tiwa that are very thematic, and then aspects that completely aren't. And I always bang this drum, but I don't really care about theme. Games are not novels. They're not films. They're not dealing in the kind of narrative that films and books do. They are mechanical objects, and Reiner Knizia is an engineer. Reiner Knizia sits and he takes out those little files that horologists in Switzerland has, and he files each cog until it slips into the other one perfectly. This is what games should be, right?
And yet his games are not among the most popular or best-selling, right?
Sure. I think what's really fascinating about games, the modern sort of renaissance of board games, is that it's a very American-driven phenomenon, I think. And Americans, firstly, love narrative. They want a story with their games. And I think, secondly, they like bling, and they like their games to be rambunctious and over the top and full of mountains of plastic. And I know I'm generalizing here, but this is undeniable if you look at Kickstarter. And Knizia doesn't design games that demand that. He designs more modest, more simple, and more deep games. There is nothing, and as I said before, there's no demonstration of one's intelligence in a Knizia design. He simply does what the game requires. If you were going to get the listeners of this podcast to get round the table with you and play Tigris and Euphrates, what would you say to them?
Wait, with me? Maybe find someone else to play with? No.
Come on, it's Christmas. Don't be a Grinch.
Yeah. I think, Reiner Knizia, he's got to be like the gamer's game designer. And if we ever did a list of most underrated designers, he might really come out on top, like, surprisingly. This game is often considered part of, like, I think a trilogy of games. I believe maybe Ra and Samurai are the other two. I forget. It even came out in a slightly different form, Yellow and Yangtze. So I think that what Tigris and Euphrates captures is like something about like this classic Knizia way of designing a game. So if you like ignore all the sort of chaff that he's produced and you want to have a straight down the middle, boiled to its essence, Reiner Knizia play of a game, this is the game to try. Tigris and Euphrates, like if you're a gamer, you need to play Reiner Knizia games. You need to play at least a Reiner Knizia game. And if you want to have all of what he is capable of, all of his intelligence and his creativity that's contained and captured by a single game, then it's Tigris and Euphrates. Play it, love it, play it again.
Thank you for listening to this show and indulging our overweening nostalgia. If you would like to support the show, you can do that by going to patreon.com/5G4D. And we both wish you a very Merry Christmas.